Hello, my name is Daniel Santos, and I'm honored to be featured in this video. My background is growing up in the Imperial Valley in Southern California, and also working in migrant education, and then working at the governor's office for 24 years. It's been a real privilege to be associated with a variety of Hispanic community issues and efforts in advocacy for that. Since the time in the governor's office, I've gone back to Willamette University and served as an associate dean, again, working on diversity issues, social justice, and other matters of importance to the Hispanic community. And now, in my retired life, I continue to do those through board service, again, working on educational issues, social justice, and again, equity issues. So it's a real privilege to be with you today. I was born in Parole, California, in the Imperial Valley, Imperial County, southeastern corner of the state of California. It's agricultural valley, year-round farming, because it's irrigated from the waters from the Colorado River. So the valley was my birthplace and where I grew up all the way through high school. To work in the fields was something my dad told us we were going to be doing, not because of monetary necessity per se. We obviously got some money from that, but it was to instill upon us that strong work ethic was a key thing. The people that worked in the fields had a dignity to them. And it was that a skilled labor. It was very skilled. You just don't throw people into a field somewhere and say, become farm workers. So I got to learn that it was, again, a very skilled position. Again, I had a new evaluation of what it meant to be a farm worker, as well as my own experience. And then lastly, I think my dad instilled on us something that we hold true even to now, that education was a much better route to give us new opportunities going forward, career-wise, personal-wise. So my parents emphasized education. And every year, even if we went north to work in the fields, we came back in time for school to start so that we could continue our education. It was a time to choose to go on to a four-year institution. And I chose Southern Oregon University. And I still recall to this day when I told my mother that I was going to this place called Oregon, she said, "Que no necesitas un pasaporte?" which translates into, don't you need a passport to get there? And I had to explain to her that Oregon was in the United States, but I was destined to go to Southern Oregon and become my own person, educationally, personally, professionally. So it was a great opportunity for me to go to Southern Oregon. I was encouraged to go to law school, and I ended up attending Willamette University. I will share with you that as most law students, I went to law school thinking about social justice, fairness, equity, what's right, and thinking that that's what law was all about. If there's anything law school taught me about, if there's anything that my legal profession has taught me about, is that going to law school in the legal profession is about what's legal. And a lot of good causes kept going back to courts, saying that this is not fair, this is not right, and we kept losing. So the other part of the education was that if you can't win on the laws you have to change the laws. And that's a different structure, the legislative process. But again, it's just another alternative that you learn about in law school, and it helped me tremendously. I don't think it's so much that I chose migrant education as it chose me. When I was finishing up my studies at Southern Oregon University, a program called Migrant Education was doing an assessment in Jackson County, Medford, Ashland, Central Point, those places. And what that assessment that I worked on taught us is that Mexican children from farm worker families were not going to school while they were in Jackson County. The families simply were concerned about the safety, the well-being of their students, and that they didn't get the educational services, bilingual ed, ESL, a number of other services. So they would keep their kids out of school until they went back to California, Texas, or Mexico. So we learned a lot about the fact that Jackson County wasn't serving these children and started a brand new program in 1976, which I got to be the manager of that program when we started it in Jackson County. It became an exemplary program in serving multiple school districts. So I'm very proud and privileged to have worked in that program. And I love the motto of migrant education. It's a harvest of hope. The kids that we sow into the schools can hopefully turn into a harvest of hope. So I think those are the things, again, that just emphasize education and a student's well-being. So I was very proud at that time with Migrant Education. The opportunity I got to work in the office of the governor came in 1987, when then House Representative Rocky Berea, the first elected Hispanic to the Oregon legislature, recommended me to the governor's office to work on their staff. The first time I had the opportunity to walk up the Capitol steps as an employee of the governor's office, I knew it came with a challenge of bringing all my experiences and voices, including the Hispanic community's voice, into the table, the policy table discussions with the governor and staff. Even if it did involve an issue that was directly related to my policy area, I had experience, and others around the table had experience, that were valuable to consider for the governor and for our office decisions. So it was quite the challenge and quite the opportunity. My first job for the governor was for Governor Neil Goldschmidt when I did citizen representative work. It's an ombudsperson type of work to help citizens with their concerns, their questions about state government. And it was a great educational opportunity for me to learn, not just about state government, but what it did and didn't do, as well as federal and local governments, and then obviously the private sector. So it was a big education for me, and I got to learn a lot that I think I could help our broader communities with. But other than that, I think I just had a chance to engage myself in Hispanic community events. For instance, Governor Roberts was supportive of building a farm worker housing unit in Woodburn. The community itself, the city itself, was opposed to that. And it was becoming quite the battle. And Governor Roberts, to her credit, said to the city, if you don't support this project, we will take all your community block grant development funds and stop those. So by pushing that lever, the city agreed to let the project go forward, and it's now one of the national models for farm worker housing across the nation. And it serves not just the farm worker community, but the broader communities through its community service centers. I think my time reflecting back on working for 4 governors is the ability to connect people in state government as well as federal and local governments with one another to address issues, especially those in the Hispanic community, so that there's a better representation of those issues, discussion, and hopefully decisions made in their favor to provide better services. I think all of us that serve in the governor's office, in the past and presently, are committed to serving not just the governor, but all Oregonians. It's one I take great pride in, knowing that 4 governors have asked me to serve them, especially to provide a voice to the Hispanic community at some of these discussions. For me, I wish my lasting legacy to be one of service, servant leadership, giving back to our communities. I think that's been my goal through my family, through my friends, through my communities, and just to see who those leaders were ahead of us in contributing to all these good causes has been a tremendous asset and opportunity for me. I do remember the aspects of getting into good trouble, and I continue to think that's a great thing to do. In other words, just don't let people tell you no. Find out ways to get those issues addressed. But I think that's our obligation to do for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities.